Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. Thus writes the Sufi Islamic mystic poet Jalal al-Din Muhammad Rumi. We've already sung a verse from him earlier today, Come, come, whoever you are. As a young adult, I loved the story The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It's about a pilot who crashes in the Sahara Desert and meets a young prince from a faraway, tiny asteroid. Many of you have probably read it in your much younger years. I remember reading it to my two preteen nieces when I was babysitting them. I was enthralled by it and they were bored silly. The little prince is infinitely curious about everything, and the pilot's encounter with the prince awakens his own curiosity. Can we have slide 1, please? When the pilot was a 6-year-old child, he was mesmerized by a picture he saw in a book, a boa constrictor swallowing an animal. The pilot, in much later years, draws this picture from memory. Can we have slide 2, please? He then draws the boa after it swallows his prey whole. Here is his famous drawing number 1. That's what he calls it. And he shows this masterpiece to his parents. He asks them if it frightens them. They're not frightened. They explain to him, frightened? Why should anyone be frightened by a hat? The pilot explains that his picture depicts a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. The grown-ups are not able to understand it. Can we have slide 3, please? There we go. So he draws it again to make things clearer to his parents. Here is his famous drawing number 2. So it is with all of us sometimes, many times, every day. We don't understand the curiosity of a child. And then 6 years later, in terms of story time, at the end of the novella, the pilot narrator reflects upon his life. And no grown-up will ever understand that this is a matter of so much importance. We're drawn into anticipated and planned realities of our daily lives. We look at the calendars on our phones, on our walls, and we miss the mysteries of life that are all around us all the time. As we grow up and grow older, we often forget our own innate curious gaze. Every moment, every interruption has something to offer, something to teach, something to experience. We all too often rush through those moments trying to be on time for something or trying to be on task for something we have to do or rushing into the next moment of lives. We forget to stop and pause and view that moment and experience that moment and be in that moment. And we might miss the day that an unexpected visitor, say a little prince from a faraway asteroid, appears right in front of you from whom you can learn so much. That's awakening curiosity. When you came in today, you were given or asked to pick up an item from a basket together with your order of service. Take that item now, please. Examine it fully. Experience it as if the little prince was looking at this item with the depth of his being, with the depth of his curiosity, with concern for nothing else in this moment right now. What does it look like? Look at it with your own eyes. Look at it maybe with the microscope of your eyes, Or maybe look at it with the telescope of your eyes. Look at it with your third eye. Look at it through the eyes of a child. Feel it. What does it feel like? Touch it all over. How do all the little in-between spaces on it feel? Can you pry them open? They'll pry. Maybe it's sticky, maybe wet, maybe it's dry, maybe it's brittle, maybe it's sharp. What does it feel like? Hold it up to your ear. Does it have a sound? What does it sound like? Does it muffle the other sounds coming through the room? Smell it with your nose. What do you smell? What does it smell like? Does it have a smell? Are you smelling it, or are you smelling your fingers maybe? We're looking at this through the curiosity of the little prince. Finally, I invite you to taste it if you can be just as curious as the little prince. You don't have to. Maybe some of you baby boomers remember this guy named Euell Gibbons. Who remembers Euell Gibbons? He said in his TV commercials, its naturally sweet taste reminds me of wild hickory nuts. Does this taste like wild hickory nuts to you? For those of you who are younger, Gibbons was an advocate of natural foods, including eating all the edible parts of pine trees. Maybe next month we'll have roasted pine for our plant-based potluck. By examining an object attentively with our five senses, with the curiosity of a child, we can awaken our own curiosity about it. Just think, what did you notice about this pine cone that I didn't mention what it was in my entire discussion with you so far? What did you notice about it that you didn't notice before when you picked it up earlier today? Our Unitarian heritage has indeed a very long tradition of awakening curiosity. And here's one example for it. We have a catechism that was originally published in 1605. It's called the Rakovian Catechism. It was first published in Polish, the language of the people. And it doesn't ask religious questions and then provide pat religious answers to those questions as most catechisms do. No, it doesn't do that at all. It asks all the typical religious questions of a catechism, but then it explores those questions and answers with curiosity and with human reason. It's a book of curiosity. It invites us, the reader, to explore and ponder those questions ourselves, to see what answers we can come up with, not what answers the church is teaching us to be the correct answers. Inspired by the scientific revolution of early modern Europe, it models a kind of curiosity, disciplined inquiry, scientific inquiry, rather than a simple assertion of church authority. As Dr. Seuss once said, sometimes the questions are complicated and the answers are simple. Already back then, 1605, 400 plus years ago, these pre-Unitarian authors, they had not named themselves Unitarians as yet, but they joined the fold. They reject the Trinity in favor of the unity of God, hence the name Unitarian that they were soon to adopt. They reject the pre-existence of Christ. They reject vicarious atonement, which nowadays most Christian denominations already reject. We rejected it first, and many other traditional Christian doctrines. For each traditional teaching, it asks two questions. The first one, does Scripture support it? Okay, and then they explore what Scripture says. And the second one says, does it make rational sense? If it doesn't make rational sense, it doesn't make sense. Forget about it. And it's not a private questioning written by a single individual, like with Martin Luther's famous catechism or John Calvin's catechism. This book is a collaborative effort written by a group of scholars at the Unitarian Academy in Krakow. Did you guys know there was a Unitarian Academy in the 1600s in the middle of Poland, who themselves were in conversation with ministers across Poland and across other parts of Europe? It's a collective work. That reflects another facet of our Unitarian tradition. Decisions and interpretations are made collectively together in conversation with each other, rather than based on a single individual's authority who might or might not be wearing a pointy hat. The Catechism includes many conclusions similar to the following. So, be mindful when you guys were in Lutheran or Methodist or Catholic or Baptist Sunday school, do you remember hearing this type of line? It can be by no means proved from all these attributes of Christ that his nature was, as is contended, divine. 1605. This catechism, this Rakovian catechism, was translated into many other languages. It was revised along the way. It was published and republished for centuries and distributed all over Europe. My edition is the 1818 edition, 200 years later, for over 200 years. This was the influential work in our Unitarian tradition. The Rakovian Catechism awakened curiosity in countless Unitarian communities to think for themselves, to ask those difficult questions, to engage in curiosity, and to use our rational thought to figure out the answers to those questions, rather than to simply accept the authority of dogma. So this little book was deemed dangerous and radical. It was publicly banned and burned in parts of Europe. Religious wars rose up around it. Unitarian publishing houses and schools were suppressed, and even one was burned to the ground for republishing this book. Since our inception, our Unitarian community was and is organized around inquiry and reason rather than authority and compliance. Awakening curiosity is woven into our religious tradition. And this tradition of curiosity continues in our religious history even today and in history. So the Mayflower Pilgrims who came to colonize North America received a specific blessing when they were leaving the English shores. Their pastor blessed them with the following words: "The Lord hath more truth yet to break forth out of his holy word." Okay, big phrase. We've since paraphrased that phrase as revelation is not sealed. Maybe you've heard that phrase. The notion that revelation is not sealed is perhaps the most theologically direct expression of awakening curiosity in our religious tradition. There's always something new to discover and find out and experience and engage with. The mysteries of life keep speaking to us. They keep speaking to us through nature, history, science, our own personal experiences, and the still unfolding, unwritten, unknown human story. We are writing our own story. We are writing our own history in our lives. And curiosity is a perfectly natural part of our collective spiritual exploration. Michelle Collins, the Reverend Michelle Collins writes, the person who stops asking, stops growing, and stops being supervised by the sacred has effectively closed their minds. Awakening curiosity is precisely the opening through which new light and new justice, new compassion, and new understanding resounds across 4 centuries of our religious tradition. And that issue of new compassion that came up in our joys and sorrows today. We need to awaken a new compassion in our society and our country today. Awaken curiosity. Treat each life encounter with curiosity. And because of this ongoing curiosity, we call ourselves the living tradition. And our hymnal is called Singing the Living Tradition. Like pine cones, a living thing grows, responds to its environment, and changes as conditions require. And crucially, a living thing can also die if the right circumstances are met. So together we seek to answer life's questions through awakening curiosity. Dogma does not satisfy our hunger. We participate in our living tradition by awakening to the curiosities in our life, to all of life's questions, and to all the challenges that we face in life, the hardships, the diseases, the natural disasters, and that sometimes those experiences that we have, those emotional experiences, where we end up being in some sort of funk and we don't know how to get out of. Those are all opportunities to awaken our own curiosity. One day, the little prince tells the pilot that he wants to experience the sunset. He says, I'm very fond of sunsets. Come, let us look at a sunset now. And so then the pilot, in his adult voice, says, but we must wait. Wait for what? For the sunset. We must wait until it is time. The pilot explains to the little prince, everybody knows that when it is noon in the United States, okay, it's 11:27, 32 minutes short of noon, the sun is setting in France. But on his tiny planet, the little prince explains, he can sit on his chair and watch the sunset. And when it grows dark and the sun has set, he can move his chair forward to the edge of twilight, like I'm doing, and watch the sunset again. One day he enjoyed doing this so much and he loved watching the sunset so much that he did that 44 times. Awaken curiosity. Go out and watch the sunset 44 times.